and given it's for the title. I'm going to say it one more time. I know that Benson Henderson has sort of adopted Arizona as his home place, being from the MMA lab, but he is from the Tacoma, Washington area. This was in Seattle. Henderson was very much the hometown guy. Nate Diaz going to someone else's backyard, to do them a solid. I want to point out how often it happens in his career.
Yeah, and title fight atop this Fox card, as you mentioned, this is one of these quarterly Fox cards where like pay-per-views basically on regular TV. Is this top of the mountain for a guy I don't want to say we forgot about in Benson Henderson, but I think because he's had this final twilight chapter where he's been an opponent at times and we've seen him lose his bigger fights, you forget what made this guy great at lightweight. And even though Nate's got a 3-inch height and 6-inch reach, which had been a theme of Nate dominating, Benson Henderson is basically a welterweight in a lightweight's body here. And you're finding that theme when it's somebody who's not going to succumb to the cardio, which Benson always has great 5-round championship cardio, not going to succumb on the ground. Benson Henderson's legs, as they said on the broadcast, were twice the size of Nate's. Guys with size and skill do give Nate problems. Is this top of the damn mountain champion Benson Henderson the best he ever was?
So here's the thing. This was Nate Diaz at his very best, I thought, heading into this contest. The problem was this was also prime Benson Henderson.
He's just beaten Frankie Edgar twice in very good fights. Like, this is 5-fight win streak.
This is prime Benson Henderson. And so what ends up happening is what you might imagine. He is able to take Nate Diaz down seemingly at will. He's able, for the most part, to avoid any kind of real submission threat. There were a few times in the course of this, by the way, this is a 5-round main event. You can see an outside Ashi Garami from Nate Diaz, what he's trying there, but it doesn't get very close. And to me, BC, we talked about the swag. We talked about the confidence.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. It turned into that, where I think Nate realized that...
That was round 3 when he was down already.
He was down. And there was really no way he was going to win. I think Nate got frustrated in this one.
Oh, absolutely. But why did he? Calf kicks. Look, Benson Henderson was like was he the first guy who really made that a monster part of his offense?
First, I don't know, but he definitely popularized and made that use much wider than it was before him.
Right off the bat, he's in round 1, he's kind of making Nate wobble and kind of brutalizing him with the leg kicks. But it's, once he worked his boxing, and you'd think Nate would have a huge striking advantage, even with the 6-inch reach advantage. Benson got inside on him, starts bloodying Nate's nose up. Damn, when it's like, so this is where you had to ask yourself, like, was the very best of Nate ever in terms of legitimate rankings and trying to get the title picture. Is he not technical enough when he fights a really technical elite fighter? Because there's some guys he out-techniques when he needs to, especially on the ground.
Well, here's the thing. Benson Henderson's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, too, and a black belt in taekwondo, and a dynamic, fast, risk-taking, but still very durable athlete. Remember, Benson Henderson had a fucking toothpick in his mouth. which
The
Joe
whole
Rogan
fight.
asked him about, and he was like, I don't have a toothpick. He was just doing a weird bit. But this is what I mean. You get a guy who's got the wrestling skills plus jiu-jitsu skills, and they're a physical athlete. That's a tough combination for what Nate Diaz can
And
offer.
Nate couldn't get in his head, and that meant after at the end of round 1, you remember Nate got right up in Benson's face, nose to nose, did nothing. Flipping him off in round 3 on the ground, did nothing, could not lure him into a brawl. Luke, a big win, 50-43 on one card, 50-45 on 2, so it shows you full domination. But I want to start talking about money. I mean, this is Nate Diaz's, in some ways, mountaintop moment in terms of how far he could get challenging for a title in the UFC, right? He came close other times.
In a relatively conventional process.
And I know this is not a pay-per-view, but it is a quarterly Fox card, which is treated as one. This card, ratings-wise, did 3.41 million on Fox. Nate Diaz is in the main event of a UFC championship fight, which should be his, again, mountaintop moment of climbing the ladder. And his pay is $50,000. He didn't win, so there's no bonus. This is 2012. You know, boxers on regular HBO or Showtime are making $2.5–3 million each in main events, not titles. So, you know, depending on what star level they are. You know, it's not everybody, but you get the point. $50,000 to be the opponent in a nationally televised main event that did nearly 4 million viewers. And Benson, as the champion, is getting 78,000 base, 39,000 is the bonus for the victory. For the headlines that still dominate today in fighter pay, this is 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the B-side in a UFC title fight on national television in front of 4 million made $50,000 to be there. If you're watching on national television an NBA game, the 12th guy or 15th guy on the bench is making the league minimum of
Yeah, but say he's making more than that.
800,000 or whatever. I'm sure 10 years ago, too. You talk about the disparity. You talk about what fueled Nate taking such long breaks before he finally became this pay-per-view star against McGregor. This is the beginning, I have to believe, of the seed planting of the bad blood in him of like, look at what I'm doing for the company. I'm taking on anyone. I'm not turning down fights. I'm putting on brawls. I'm putting myself in there. He ain't getting paid shit for it, Luke. Don't you just look at that and gasp? 50,000?
I lived through it in real time. It seems insane to go back to, but I remember this all the time. And folks wondering, like, why is Diaz such a malcontent? You tell me. You tell me why he's such a malcontent. He's fought nothing. Have I mentioned one person here who is not some easy victory for him? This is some just nobody he could walk through in their backyards for what I think most would consider a relatively paltry amount of money. Gee, I wonder why he has been such a malcontent, which the word might be. But the journey is not there. It doesn't stop there, BC. We go now to the next fight, which would be a real low point, frankly, in the career of Nate Diaz.
The low point, you'd have to say.
Probably the low point, maybe, depending on one's perspective, certainly. He takes on Josh Thompson. This is April 20th of 2013. And this one's kind of interesting, BC. I don't know if you really paid attention to this. This is the UFC and Fox card headlined by Benson Henderson and Gilbert Melendez. By the way, a teammate here again of Nate Diaz. And I thought, by the way, Gilbert Melendez won that contest, but take that for what it is worth. Yeah. Nate Diaz on the main card. Here's another thing you could say. Well, he's a North California guy, so this is a hometown game. But it's not. Josh Thompson is the guy. This is in San Jose, California. Josh Thompson is the guy from San Jose as an AKA guy. So, of course, he gets the much bigger pop. Even in California, BC, he is not necessarily the hometown guy here. I want to point out how often this happens.
So is Josh Thompson at this point, first fight back in the UFC in 8 years, Luke, since 2004 when he fought on UFC.
After having the best trilogy maybe in the MMA history with Gilbert Melendez and Strikeforce.
And directly removed from that third fight where he lost the Strikeforce title in that match with Gilbert Melendez. Comes back to the UFC, looking for a big fight. This was on national television, Fox, as you mentioned. 3.31 million viewers peaked in the main event. Nate in the co-main here? $15,000 salary, no bonus. Right. You're like, dude, can we move on? I'm like, no. 15,000.
15 grand. 15 grand to fight Josh.
Josh
Thompson.
made $95,000 plus the $10,000 win bonus.
Can you just imagine?
So look, Josh Thompson wasn't even in the company. They bought
Strikeforce.
Okay, so they're bringing him back into the fold. I know he had just lost in the Strikeforce title match, but he's getting $95,000 day one here. Nate just lost in the UFC title match in which he made 50 grand. And he's coming in at co-main event on national television in front of 3.5 million people at $15,000. You do have to point the finger back and say, well, you accepted it, right?
To an extent, but also, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to Strikeforce now? Like, that's not really even an option anymore. And more to the point, it's just about I would argue, the predatory practices in this particular case by the promoter. But here's the other part about it. 15 grand, 150 grand, 15 million. It ain't easy to fight Josh Thompson. This version of him was very good.
Look, give the punk credit.
He was fucking awesome. He was really. Folks don't know about the career of Josh Thompson. Athletic, could wrestle, very good striker, well-trained, good team. Crazy Bob Cook had an AKA in his corner. And I thought this was the first time someone put together, BC, a complete performance against him. You can say that about Vincent Henderson, but here's what I mean. On the feet. Sticking and moving, leg kicking himself, never being a stationary target, clinch breaking,
yes.
Whereas Vincent Henderson would kind of embrace the clinch and use it to take him down. This was a get off me kind of approach, and he was chewing Diaz up.
And Josh is small, so he had that same disadvantage I talk about in terms of height and reach for normal Nate opponents at lightweight. He overcame that with technique and the threat that he established early. A clean head kick early in round one got Nate's attention. He landed a second time, although it was partially blocked, showing Nate that, you know, wherever you think you're going to be, I'm dangerous and can catch you.
He walks to a certain direction. He pulls Nate into it. Nate thinks it's going to go low, so he sticks his head out to get his feet behind him, and it lands clean.
Well, Nate's bloody from an elbow in the clinch, so Josh on the ground and in the clinch is having big moments. This is a very good performance from Josh. And when you look up and down this great resume of Nate Diaz, who has stopped him?
Nobody.
Well, there was the cuts against Jorge, but Nate was kind of he was still in that to a certain degree. He got knocked the hell out here. This is the only man that's done it in the history of Nate Diaz. Am I wrong?
Well, you're not wrong, but he didn't get knocked full out. What ends up happening is he gets the head kick again, and then he gets dropped, and then
barrage of punches.
Barrage of punches. But here's the real key. Let's look at the photo here. We make sure to put it before the show. The towel. See how the towel came in? Diaz's corner threw the towel in his defense. Now, I don't know if he was dealing with injuries in the camp or not. I don't know if there was. You can see the towel being thrown right there again. They went in to save this dude, but it was the kick that landed, and then the subsequent punch.
Yeah.
And he just had nothing.
Yeah, he wasn't not cold, but he was hurt by the kick, and the punches were firm and clean. And
his corner had enough. They saw enough. Josh Thompson remains the only guy to do that to Nate Diaz, even to this day. And Nate Diaz has fought some fucking hammers along the way.
It was kind of like what Edwards did to Usman, just the opposite leg, right?
I don't. Yeah, a little bit, maybe a little bit, okay. But yes, so, to a degree. But I'm just trying to point out here, this was a real bad loss for Diaz's career. I remember his stock after the Henderson fight, where he not only lost but was giving him the finger because he just couldn't get anything done, and then to get stopped by Josh Thompson. It wasn't like he was fighting chumps, but the nature of the losses to go from thorough to then being stopped, the MMA community was beginning to toss Diaz out. Remember, you've seen that meme where the guy lets go of the toy?
Yeah.
I don't want to play with you anymore. It was that kind of moment in the community.
Well, Nate's frustrated, but we're back in another main event opportunity.
Yes, he does rebound from this pretty nicely. So we go to now UFC on Fox. The Ultimate Fighter again.
Rousey versus
Team Rousey versus Team Tate finale back in Las Vegas. He gets a knockout of the night, BC, with now his second pro but third overall meeting with Gray Maynard. Now, I do believe, BC, it is fair to say Gray Maynard was in a somewhat compromised state since then, or I should say at this point.
In hindsight, so it's weird. I see a lot of people saying this is actually the most dominant, best-looking performance from Nate Diaz. Now, it was not even a full round. It was dominant, but to be fair, despite them having the history and the rivalry, Maynard was 1-2-1 in his last 4 coming in, and both losses were stoppages against Frankie Edgar and TJ Grant on strikes. He had a split decision win over Guida, so this is not, this is no longer prime Gray Maynard, but given their history here, Luke, Gray Maynard's saying before the fight, this guy's got pillow hands. I'm going to knock him out. I think Nate wanted to prove a point. Maybe it's the frustration of having lost twice for very little money at the high level. He wouldn't get big money here, $30,000 in a main event on regular TV here for the tough finale. But it was, outside of the early takedown from Gray, it was all Nate. He rocked him, stopped him, kicked the shit out of him.
Fight went half a round. 2:38 of the round 1 is when they called it.
And there was an edge to Nate in this one.
He was mean.
You thought it would be the type of thing that would lead to another momentum, and it wasn't, but it was another high point in his.
It was a reminder of what he could do. It was a real get back kind of win. It was an in your face kind of win. It was a very Diaz kind of win in a certain kind of manner, if you want to look at it that way. But it didn't sustain a new wave of fortune. It didn't foretell of things to come in that way. Just a good reminder. And by the way, a good way to win a rivalry as well, I suppose, on that. So it takes us, BC, to something where I want to point out something as well. We mentioned he fought 4 times in 2011, right? He fought twice in 2012. He had the Thompson loss and the Gray Maynard win in 2013. Now we go to 2014, where he fought just one time. 2015, just one time. But for 2014, it's UFC on Fox, Dos Santos versus Miocic. You might be asking, where is Nate Diaz in this case? He is in the co-main event. He is taking on Rafael Dos Anjos. But BC, For folks who may not remember, this is peak Nate Diaz at odds with UFC, prior to certainly the modern era anyway. He missed weight because he had a really bad injury heading into this. He had been at odds with the company and been fined for certain language he had used. This was a real bad time.
Does it make it better that he is in the co-main event here of a nationally televised Fox card, which is like a pay-per-view, and he's getting paid $16,000 base salary. He lost, so there's no bonus, and fined $4,000 for missing weight, which is his fault, obviously.
Yes.
But, you know, RDA...
It was a fight of the night bonus, but I don't know if he was eligible since he missed weight.
Well, RDA, who comes in having 7-1 in his last 8, despite that loss to Khabib during that run, which was, you know, a clean domination by Khabib, this is arguably the most dangerous RDA there was, because he would use this. And this is kind of the beginning of Nate being a kingmaker in the second half of his career. Guys that he would lose to would then go directly to a title shot. It would be here for RDA. But RDA making $86,000 on paper to come in, 41 with the win bonus. Is Nate just in a long-ass contract he can't get out of? Like, what the hell's going on here, Luke? It's freaking $16,000 in the co-main event? How does a former title challenger, like, how is this even possible?
The contracts are not in his favor.
They're draconian.
They're draconian at this point. Still, this is not that long ago. We're talking 2014.
All right, how does RDA do it despite having a
Any way he wants,
Well,
basically.
yeah, but really the calf kicks, Luke. He chopped him the hell up. Worse than Rory did, worse than whoever did that also on this run, Luke. It was a continuation of that, but it was the most brutal of anyone.
Also,
attacking.
this is also, we talked about peak Benson when Nate fought him. Here's Nate fighting peak, I would say, or pretty close to peak RDA, right? Because RDA doesn't have the belt at this point, but RDA had just stopped Benson Henderson.
With a flying knee, yes.
Before this contest. So you're getting a version of RDA who is, I mean, red hot. And Nate had to encounter him unmotivated, injured, missing weight, hating life at this point. And it showed. He had a bad performance.
You know, this actually might be a lower moment than the Josh Thompson knockout loss.
I think so.
Because of where his headspace was. And if you notice late in the third round, though, Nate slaps from the bottom. He slaps RDA, trying to get him to, like, brawl with him, and RDA just slaps him right the hell back. You love that.
Also, the leg kicks were so bad in this one that the referee had the doctor look at them between rounds.
I mean, look, RDA was savage.
You might be like, oh, you're being serious. Yes, you may never see that again, where a referee is not an eye injury, not a cut, nothing. Leg kicks.
30-26, 30-26, and 30-27. And
also, the Wheaties look. Roll the pictures one more time. I don't know if we have them. I may have just noticed this after the fact. The Wheaties logo, right? You can see it right there at his feet. See that? The Wheaties logo was on the octagon. At this time, I think Pettis is still the champion.
Because RDA would go from this fight to knock him out.
That's right. And then also, Steven Seagal side was watching this fight.
Because he taught Anderson Silva everything he learned. Hey, Luke, this would be the lowest point in all reality, like we said. I remember thinking this was it. I remember thinking, look, we'd seen him in the title level. Yeah, he's got a name, but, dude, when he steps up, he kind of loses. You never would have guessed at this moment. What is he at this age?
29, 28, 29.
You know, would I have guessed that he would go on to main event pay-per-views? No. Would I have guessed that he would come back around and kind of sniff, you know, being considered for title shots because of his name and ability? No. I really thought this was the beginning of the end. And you can never count out a Diaz, because it's the same reason why there are a lot of people saying, look, Khamzat, slow your roll on, he's going to tear him away. Nobody does that to Nate Diaz. Really, outside of Josh Thompson, nobody does that to Nate Diaz. His ability to constantly reinvent himself despite the odds around him, whether they're self-enforced or not, has been amazing. He's a warrior, he's a survivor, and that takes us, after a long layoff, to a very important fight in this story, Luke.
Yes. Now, let's be very clear about something. You talked about this being the low point. It wasn't just a low point with his own career. It was the low point, I think, with the fans.
Yeah.
This was the low point with the promotion. This is really, everything had kind of fallen apart. Everything he had built in that 3-fight run and whatever redemption he got from the Great Maynard rematch, everything had kind of fallen apart through this. But here comes the redemption story. As you indicated, BC, Orlando, Florida is our destination, December 19th of 2015. Speaking of Dos Anjos, this is Dos Anjos Cowboy 2 in the main event. Of course, at that time for the lightweight title, Nate Diaz on the main card taking on Michael Johnson.
Guess what he's making here?
Ooh, I'm going to say 50?
40 grand, would get the 20 grand bonus. But here's the key. To show you how low Nate was considered here, despite being a name as a, you know, proven product, he'll give you fun fights. Michael Johnson in the pre-fight interview says, I'm going to retire Nate Diaz. I'm going to knock him out and retire him.
Wow.
So that was a thought that was relatively in play, that he was that close.
And also, I want to point out, this is not the Blackzilians' backyard, but we're in Florida, so they booked the Florida guys on here. Here, once again, is Nate Diaz going to somebody else's backyard.
The visual difference at the start of this fight, and Goldie would point it out, is coming off that year-plus layoff, the best shape of Nate's career.
He looked tremendous.
By far. So, in his mind, he'd already had the dead end at welterweight. He had already sort of, went to the title level but couldn't get there. 2 losses in a row. I think this is him going, look, let's start at the beginning. Let's refresh. Let's do it. No stone unturned. Take long time off. Refresh the mind, refresh the body, and let's make one more big-ass run at it. And he came out with that intensity right off the start.
And at about 3 minutes in of the first round, at the 3-minute mark or so, or maybe the 2-minute mark, but about 3 minutes in is when everything began to turn Diaz's way. Now, of course, in the end, it's a unanimous decision, 29-28 in his favor, so Michael Johnson was hardly out of this fight in that sense, but Diaz had that reach you have gone back and talked about, I think, quite rightly, over and over again. And at the 3-minute mark is the first time you see Diaz smile at Michael Johnson, because I think he felt like, bitch, I got you. I got you right where I want you. Now, again, Michael Johnson went to the leg kicks a little bit, not enough, I thought, in this contest to get it done. He had some decent moments where he would pop Diaz as well, had some good body work. But BC, true or false, the boxing of Diaz, yes, it was back in the Maynard fight, but here was a competitive fight against a ranked contender at the time, and Diaz put it on him with his boxing.
I don't want to forget about the closing sequence of this fight. I had forgotten that Nate got rocked by a big punch, and it looked like he was a little wobbly. He was able to close the show.
And Johnson tried for a late takedown late as well.
When Nate's going downhill, look at the taunting in this fight, the pointing, the laughing, the smiling.
Even doing this.
When he's the aggressor and he can get his shots off, and with Michael Johnson, there wasn't a ton of a takedown threat. He's a boxer. He can get you out of there. But this is, at lightweight, he found a way to get back in and find the very best of Nate. In incredible shape, ripped up, and over 3 rounds, as you mentioned, winning by 1 point in all 3 cards, but it was clear Michael Johnson kicked him after the bell. Did you see that? It was
tried, yes.
And that tension would take us into the post-fight interview, which you could argue is up there on the Mount Rushmore of Nate iconic viral moments.
Not just Nate iconic viral moment, but what's one of the most impactful post-fight speeches ever in terms of what someone did to get something else. This might be number 1. You guys might all remember, but it is worth pointing out. Let's roll it.
This was a beautiful performance against a very tough guy in Michael Johnson. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, Conor McGregor, you're taking everything I work for, mother. I'm gonna fight your ass. You know what's the real fight? What's the real money fight is me, not these clowns that you already punked at the press conference. Don't no one want to see that. You know you beat them already. That's the easy fight. You want that real right here. Hey, and I'm not.
Unfortunately, we can't like that on Fox.
You forget, BC, he did it on
say that on Fox. Yeah, we can't say that on Fox.
Even Rogan's like trying to pull the microphone away. He did it on national television. That is one of the most iconic.
What's the date on this fight?
So the date on this fight, I believe we're in December of 2015. It is December 19th at the Amway Center where we saw
So let's talk about where we are in the historic timeline. This is the same month that Conor McGregor knocked out Jose Aldo with 1 punch after kind of becoming the UFC's favored son over that previous year, fighting Mendes on short notice, being willing to do anything despite injury, fighting on a busy schedule. Conor McGregor has taken over the public narrative of who's the next big thing. And it's at a time, too, when it's like Lesnar's gone away, Rousey's still here, but Conor took it and ran and became the biggest star the sport has ever seen. So who's angrier than Nate Diaz, who is on national television here again, not getting paid anything close to what he's deserving or earning? He picked the right call out of the right person at the right time, but he would really need the right amount of luck to actually get that fight, which brings us to March of 2016, a couple months later.
Basically, people forget this. Conor McGregor was supposed to fight Rafael dos Anjos for the lightweight title.
Think about moving up and wait, just won the featherweight title by 1 punch.
If you've never seen the press conference, he eats Rafael dos Anjos alive, Conor McGregor does, wearing the Pablo Escobar, or El Chapo, I think, was he was wearing the shirt. In any case, that fight falls through. RDA can't make it. Foot injury, they can't make it, so they have to find replacements. We talked to Uriah Faber about it. He was one of the contenders they were trying to find.
Uriah revealed Nate's how he did the back and forth with the UFC. Dude, that was like stone cold. Like Nate as a negotiator and ended up working himself into the pick for even more money. I think he would only get paid $500,000 for the first McGregor fight on paper, which obviously doesn't count a pay-per-view bonus. Right. It would go up to $2 million, by the way, on paper for the rematch. Yeah. But when you heard that Conor McGregor's not going to fight for the lightweight title, but at UFC 196, the fight out card I was at, and it's one of the most incredible nights in the fight game history. Misha Tate, Holly Holm in the co-main event. What did you think about who might win? Like, this is Nate in a pay-per-view main event?
I think one of the things I realized doing this whole exercise and going through and watching these fights is I think I have at times probably slept on Nate more than I should have. And I've not been a guy who thought he was bad ever. But I think a lot of us at the time got swept up in the larger narrative about Nate being a malcontent. Remember, we kind of glossed over the fact that it's during this time, around the Rafael dos Anjos era, where Dana White famously said, Nate's not a needle mover, his brother is, this guy's not, right? We had kind of had his whole message inculcated about how Nate's not that great, Nate's not that good, he's a lesser Nick. And the reality was that was always unfair from the word go. It was not really all that true. It was manifested to be true by sort of force of the promoter and, of course, media being compliant as well. But Nate had other plans.
Shout out to him negotiating himself up to a $500,000 base salary. Look, he deserves that for all those other shitty fight nights.
This is why you want him to get the Jake Paul fight, because he is overdue for a big payday. Now, it takes us to UFC 196, BC.
Did you cover that fight?
Not live. I don't think I covered that one live.
That
UFC 196, March of 2016. You were there?
I was there, and I had covered a couple UFC cards. In fact, my first UFC card I covered was the tough finale with Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza, also in Las Vegas. This was my first Las Vegas pay-per-view UFC fight week, and coming over from boxing where, we've had fun pay-per-view weeks, and the Mayweather run was fun for many reasons. I had never experienced a fight week as fun, maybe with the exception of Mayweather-Canelo, because the Mexican fan base just brought such excitement to that. This was out of control. Do you remember the presser? It wasn't the water bottle one. It was the one where Conor got up in Nate's face and pressed the buttons enough where Nate took a swipe at him. And I remember just...
They had the one at the UFC gym as well about how you're making animal balloons with one sign and gang signs with the other.
And, they had let the fans into all these press events, and the McGregor could not be hotter. Luke, coming into this fight, it was just fun to be part of this. It was fun to see Nate get this opportunity. And don't forget, this is a welterweight fight in which Conor was just a featherweight the day before. He's kind of moving up in some ways 2 weight classes there, although he was preparing, obviously, for a lightweight fight. I remember thinking, look, the weight disparity, there were some MMA hardcore saying, no, Nate's going to win this. But I remember thinking, look, if Conor McGregor can get off on him, Nate doesn't get knocked out outside of the Josh Thompson fight, but Conor's just a force in the first round of this fight. Conor was a frickin' force. Now,
Conor was throwing everything he wanted, landing a lot of it.
Bloodying Nate up. Now, what we'd find out afterwards is Conor didn't make the weight the right way once the weight changed from lightweight to now a welterweight fight. He said he was eating steaks all week. Yeah. He didn't have the gas.
Yeah, the line for the rematch was steaks, not salad, or something like that.
Look, in terms of like turns in MMA history.
The opposite of that, sorry.
In turns, obviously the 5th round on the same night of Tate Holm had a massive turn, but maybe Carwin Lesnar is the only comparison here to what happened, where one round looked a certain way and then the second round went the complete other way. Nate didn't dominate to start the second round, but at the end of the first, Luke, he was ripped up, bloody, beaten. And I remember thinking, look, how much more before a ref stops this due to cuts? Conor really is that dude. He just moved up kind of 2 weight classes against the toughest SOB we've had in a while. And Luke, he's putting it the hell on him. He opened round 2 putting it up the hell on him. But that change in momentum is among the most... It wasn't just a moment and then it had changed.
3-minute mark of round 2.
You could feel it coming, and now I'm in the media room next door, and I could start to feel like a rumbling that you can feel it. The table, and as it happened, as it got to that moment, I don't know if I have anything to compare that to, and I wasn't even in the building. I was adjacent to it.
It does feel like Lesnar-Carwin a little bit to me, but you asked if my wife watches fights. Very rarely. This one she made time for. She's a big Nate Diaz fan. This one we made time for, and we were both, that's right, because I wasn't at this fight. We were screaming in the living room at the 3-minute mark of the second round.
Here comes Poirier, bitch!
We just couldn't believe what we were looking at, because to your point, Nate was hanging in there in the first round, but Conor was teeing off, throwing spinning hook kicks, big-ass left hands from way far away, and then finding a way. But then you could see in the second round, here's the moment. In the 3-minute mark, Nate begins to take center. And when he begins to take center, he begins to land on a much more visibly fatigued Conor McGregor. And then a big 1-2 lands
and then
that stumbles
made him a coward to the level where Conor McGregor shot. Remember that? He shot in.
And again, that's what Jim Miller did to him, too. He had been there before. Sits for the guillotine. Conor rolls. He tries to take base again. Nate stops him, takes him out, pounds on him. Conor turns, he puts the choke in from the blind side, locks it up, and there's an immediate tap from Conor. And Joe Rogan lost his fucking mind.
Maybe that's the beginning of this new era of UFC putting the cam on the announcers, and almost the announcers are trained to know that when the knockout happens, go crazy because you'll be on the broadcast later. I mean, Mauro Ranallo was doing that with WWE around this time, but this was one of those just fucking viral, insane moments. I told you the story of my cousin Mike Campbell, who was there that weekend. I gave him my press pass, which was a seat in the arena, eye level, last row in the first section.
Very unethical for you to do that.
And he watches as his first 2 UFC fights, Holman Tate and McGregor Diaz won. Luke, we said we were so happy that Nate finally got this payday that he deserved retroactively. Wasn't this the most Nate Diaz way to win a freaking fight?
It probably was. Getting bloodied, getting battered,
even as he wins
on,
it, he's dripping blood.
hanging on, then finding a way to stun him with the boxing, forcing a guy who had talked about people being weak for shooting, making them shoot, and then using that incredible jiu-jitsu to finish him off. The crowd went insane. The commentators went insane. But we talked about what he did after the Michael Johnson fight. And here comes one of the. And by the way, after beating McGregor, getting up and doing this,
Which became a mural.
which became a mural, excuse me, and just an iconic shot.
Stockton.
And then finally they clean him up, and Joe Rogan puts a microphone in his face. I don't need to tell you what happens next, but just for the purposes of reminding you, let's take a look.
Nate Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, mother.
There's one Nate Diaz. There's one Nate Diaz. That was truly a moment. You can't, it completely transformed his fortunes, completely transformed his career. A major success he turns out to be in MMA, and it feels like overnight, but I hope through this exercise, folks understand this was a long time.
And that moment was so impactful that just yesterday, I'm not doing a bit, Brendan Schaub said on his podcast that moment is what made him name his first comedy special. You might be surprised. Not the Rogan thing, that moment.
I don't think that's true.
He said it yesterday, I'm not even kidding. But as iconic a moment, so Nate goes from not journeyman, but like durable warrior who the fans love, who maybe doesn't always get the best luck and shoots himself in the foot sometimes, to Luke, a legitimate pay-per-view star. The rub you could have gotten from rallying behind Bloody to stop a Conor McGregor who's that popular as the featherweight champion. Luke, he's now a pay-per-view star. I did not think we would ever get to this.
He's not the needle mover, except, oh wait, all of a sudden he is. It's just a function of what your imagination can be. And Nate always believed in himself, not merely as a guy who could win, but as a guy that he could be popular and make money and be the kind of attraction that he ultimately turned out to be. Now, the problem with beating Conor this way is you can't do it once, BC. You got to do it twice. So they meet up again. We fast forward.
Well, it was supposed to be, Luke. This was March, UFC 196. UFC 200 was that July. It was supposed to be them. Conor McGregor famously said, what?
Didn't want to do the media.
Didn't want to fly from Iceland in training camp with Gunnar Nelson to go to Las Vegas to do this press conference for UFC 200 to penalize him. He retired on Twitter, though. Dana would push it back to UFC 202 in August. I had an option with ESPN to go to SummerSlam in Brooklyn and cover that, or go to Vegas and do this. And I don't know what I was thinking at the time. We had just launched the WWE page at ESPN. I picked SummerSlam.
Yeah, you're a dumbass. All right, this is what you get for watching wrestling.
This second fight here, Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor 2. Nate, like I mentioned, we get a $2 million base salary. Shout out to Nate. Luke, not only did it break the pay-per-view records, this card, it was... Is this a top 5 UFC fight of all time? Because I don't feel like it gets the respect it deserves.
Not for me, but again, August 20th, T-Mobile Arena,
Would you
Las
say
Vegas,
it's a
Nevada.
Great fight?
Yes, it was. This was the one where Conor said, okay, you got the best of me, but his pre-fight talk was all that I'm going to keep it at 170. I want all the same circumstances as before. And what I'm going to show you is that when I apply myself properly, I can get the job done. And BC, I thought in large part that was basically true. The fight went the full distance. We thought Conor was going to gas, and it looked like he was on his way there, but he did have a bit of a late rally. It should be noted, and you can see here, this was one of the big difference. He simplified his game plan to where he went back to the leg kicks, dropping Nate, I think, 3 times, once in the first round, twice in the second round.
It surprised me in the second fight. Even though he had dominated Nate in the first round of the first fight, it surprised me to see Conor have that big a success where he's dropping Nate.
Yes, because he didn't really do that in the first one at all. He bloodied him, but he didn't drop him like that.
But the reason why this fight was so dramatic, not only was it 5 rounds of action back and forth, in fact, don't forget, it was so violent. People forget how violent this fight is. Dana afterwards was like, I'm not going to match him a third time because they'll kill each other. And also don't forget about where this fight was virally in our culture, and it's why it broke the UFC record for pay-per-view buys that was inevitably broken by Conor versus Khabib. is that the buildup in the press conference throwing water bottles at each other,
Yep.
that shit was out. That's national news across everywhere.
Jake Shields throwing the coffee.
Jake Shields grabbing the laptop or trying to, and it's stuck. Like, these two are like celebrities, Luke. These two are like.
This was, there are not many times where a UFC fight really crosses over into like the major mainstream. This one was everywhere. It was all over Fox Sports. It was all over ESPN. It was all over every water cooler discussion. Every one of my friends who didn't watch MMA was asking me about this one. This one had transcended to a very new level that other, even big UFC fights, like $1 million pay-per-view or $1 million pay-per-view buys, don't reach this level. This was a special case.
You got to give, even though this isn't about Conor McGregor, you got to give him credit in hindsight for turning back his notion of being someone who gassed all the time. Like, there were 2 legitimate moments in this 5-round fight where I thought, oh, Conor's gassed, it's over. He did dig deep. Do you think, looking back, that he deserved on the scorecards, meaning Conor McGregor, the win in this rematch?
We actually have the scorecard. We can put that up. Let's take a look at it here for just a second. He wins 48-47, I believe, on all 3 of the judges' scorecards. And you can see here Glenn Trowbridge, Jeff Mullen, and Derek Clearly. They all score it. Let's see.
It's a majority decision because one card is 47-47 because of a 10-8 third round in favor of Nate Diaz.
Oh, that's right.
That was when Conor gasped badly, and Nate put it on him.
And Nate put it on him. In fact, the stats, I have them here in front of me. They speak to this here a little bit, if I may, in this second Conor McGregor fight. Again, he gets knocked down 3 times. Nate Diaz much busier, attempting 435 strikes, but only landing 166. McGregor attempting 322, landing 164. But listen to the round-by-round breakdown. That's more relevant. So we're going to go Diaz-McGregor, 25-34, 37-34. That's that big round 2, although he does, there's 2 knockdowns credited for Conor McGregor. Round 3, 49-26. And I thought that was when Nate was really going to begin to turn things. But credit to McGregor.
He found it. He found the gas.
Here we go. Diaz-McGregor, 36-46, and then in round 5, 19-24. A pretty remarkable job.
It really could have gone either way. Do you remember how you scored? I had it for Conor just barely.
I think I had Conor 3-2. That's what I had. Conor 3-2.
If you could go back to this point, so August of 2016, they had just broken the UFC record essentially twice with the first 2 fights, or I think they were 1-3 in UFC history, being this rivalry. You would have guessed Nate Diaz would take the ultimate rub of 2 fights with Conor McGregor, 2 in which he performed great, 1 in which he won, argued that he won the second one, and would have gone on to fight name famous celebrity, old guy fighter, and would just continue this pay-per-view run.
But he didn't.
But he didn't.
He took 3 years off.
3 years off. Now, like, he had finally gotten paid because of these 2 cards. But it wasn't as if he planned to take 3 years off. There was a lot of back and forth with the UFC during this run of Dana saying he's impossible to deal with. We tried to offer him fights.
I know for a fact they offered him a Tyron Woodley fight after a time.
But look, he had now entered a different tax bracket. Would it be fair to say in hindsight, now he's making, like I said, $2 million on here. I know he's going to demand a lot. I always argue during this 3-year run, he deserves it. He is now a major, major player. And the UFC never sees that.
This 3-year absence felt to me, again, I know they were offered him the Woodley fight when Woodley was champion. This 3-year absence to me felt like the fans finally recognized who Nate Diaz was, and the promotion refused to recognize in many ways.
And you know, they're saying, oh, we offer him fights, but it's not for big money. They're not offering him. They probably put him back at a lower price bracket. He probably said, "F that. I know what I'm worth. I know what I can do."
He knows his worth, and he wasn't just going to pour it out.
What did we miss? Okay, it's one thing to say what did we miss in that 3-year window in terms of big fights that could have been, and we can go back and forth. Who cares really? What did we miss in Nate? In terms of that, that's his second prime, right? That's his second sort of.
I think what we missed was some of the better years of his competitive ability, because we'll talk about this here in just a minute. He's taking on Khamzat Chimaev, UFC 279. Nate's 37. We saw him as a 22-year-old kid, and he was too raw at that time. So again, we go back to it. The Gomi, the Cerrone, and the Miller trio fights when he's just about to be 30 years old. That is when he is absolutely locked in, physically great. He's had some good performances subsequent to that. We've talked about some of them. He's had some not so great ones. But at 37, I do feel like, obviously this was before that, but I think from that 2016 to 2019 period, we missed some good spots of Nate's early to mid-30s where he could have been dealing on some folks.
Maybe in some ways.
We would have lost some too. I don't think he was the best guy.
And you never know what that time off did to give him the fuel to do this Chimaev fight and whatever he's going to do next. Sometimes that's there. But hey, let's fast forward 3 years.
3 years later.
Do you remember the build to this? There was a press conference
in
which Nate was there in Los Angeles, and we were all fired up. 3 years removed. He's going to fight Anthony Pettis, which was a cool fight on paper in a lot of ways.
Oh, he was supposed to fight Dustin Poirier for a time, and that whole thing got
That was going to be the year before at New York City. It didn't happen.
But
and
let me set this up.
At that presser, they announced Conor McGregor's return.
Yes. And
and
he
Nate
hated
walked
it.
out.
Yes.
So he's still feeling like they're effing him off.
Yes, they kind of are to a degree. All right, August 17th, 2019, UFC 241. He takes on Anthony Pettis. You might be asking, where was he on the card? This was headlined by Miocic versus Cormier.
Which one? One?
I believe this was the rematch because Cormier is already the champion.
Yep.
So Diaz versus Pettis is your co-main. Now, I thought that this was a very smart move by Nate Diaz because I thought Pettis was a little bit shock-worn at that point, and Diaz could swoop right in with better boxing. He's fresh. He's had 3 years off, and he could do something to him. That's exactly what happened, including with even better wrestling. He selectively found a good opponent with a good name, with a good, exciting style, who he could
It was
catch
still
it
dangerous.
still dangerous.
This is a Pettis who stopped Stephen Thompson after this.
Yes, so he's still dangerous, no doubt about it, but was beatable in a way that Nate could make it work, and he did. He looked tremendous.
Now, look, it wasn't a callback to who he was before, but it's still the premise of if Nate Diaz can get off first and be the aggressor going after you, it wasn't the same level of volume or aggression, and he did have to be leery of taking shots back. But true or false, you came out of here going, you know, he might still be able to compete against the elites in this game. Like, I was re-confident again, because after 3 years, you don't know what you're going to get.
I thought after this one, with the right matchups, he could beat a lot of guys. That's why I like the Poirier fight. Like, Poirier is a tough guy. I would pick Poirier to win. But with the way in which he looked here, I was like, just the right matchup could fit him just right.
I remember thinking he would get another title shot. I thought this was enough to revamp him. But, Luke, do we have the post-fight interview to throw to?
I don't think that we do.
Because it actually was...
we do. Yes, I'm sorry, we do.
So he gets a
Great
3-round
fight,
unanimous
having this
decision.
great victory. Do you think we'll be seeing you fighting regularly now?
The reason I was off is because everybody sucks. There's nobody to fight. But with this belt, I want to defend it against Jorge Masvidal. Had a good last fight. All respect to the man, but there ain't no gangsters in this game anymore. There ain't nobody who does it right but me and him. So I know my man's a gangster, but he ain't no West Coast gangster. You know what I'm saying?
So there you have it, calling out Jorge Masvidal.
That was a fun moment. You remember that live?
It was a really fun moment. And here was Nate being like, I've got a little bit of time left to make a little bit of money now that I'm here. Let me selectively work my way through this process to the extent that he could, creating his own future, right? Because he manifested the Conor McGregor experience to a degree. He manifested by finding and waited for the just right moment in Anthony Pettis, calling out Masvidal. Masvidal wanting to make use of his surging popularity at the exact same time.
Masvidal had knocked out Ben Askren.
That's
flying
right.
Knee. So
And
you're
it
talking
was a
about how
perfect call out.
And so with the performance, I remember thinking in that moment, wow, Nate might get himself back into the title picture. Instead, he gets himself in the BMF title picture. So we all love this matchup. It became a headlining pay-per-view with UFC's trip to MSG, same night as Canelo Kovalev. We remember what happened there.
November 2nd, 2019. I was there. Were you there?
I was at Canelo Kovalev.
I was out here.
So I
was
watched
in
this
MSG.
fight in the MGM Grand Arena, which I still can't believe it actually happened that
Yeah.
way. But here's the deal, Luke. I remember thinking, tell me, in that post-fight interview, he shows Jorge a lot of respect, saying we're the last gangsters
That's
left.
right.
Only
East Coast gangster versus
only I'm a
West Coast
gangster. So he still, puts himself over. I thought this mixed with that Brooklyn press conference, which if you give the UFC credit, in terms of setup, with the sun coming down, the Brooklyn Bridge behind them in Manhattan there, that looked like, him and Jorge dressed like Tony Montana. You were like, this is going to be awesome. And then they were almost too much of the same thing. They didn't talk trash at each other. Do you think Nate, in hindsight, erred in not calling out Jorge more like aggressively, like making it more of an enemy thing? It was almost as if he showed him too much respect.
I'll say this. Nate works best when he is working against the machine.
Yes.
When he's the guy who's the iconoclast, but you had another guy who kind of had his own story in that way a little bit.
Spider-Man meme, these two. These are
Yeah, a little bit of the Spider-Man meme. But I tell you what, President Trump showed up to the place. I remember getting in when the security was fucking insane the whole time. And I gotta say, it was a smart call out for the opponent in terms of big name, big dollars, big size. But it ended up backfiring because Jorge Masvidal beat his ass.
Well, let's be honest about who Jorge Masvidal was. This is his, third fight of 2019 in which he would resurgently become the fighter of the year.
Yes.
He had stopped Darren Till, he had stopped Ben Askren.
The Rock was at the press conference
The
holding
Rock
up
was
the belt
there
and
with the
everything.
BMF belt. It was a big freaking... I still can't believe UFC did that. Like, I give them credit in hindsight. I still can't believe they created a WWF title, basically, and did this fight, but they did. Okay, now coming into it, let's be honest about who Jorge was in Alien. This was Jorge Masvidal, who had turned things around from the desert in Central America, or not the desert, the forest in Central America at that reality show, had started baptizing people almost like 2013 Vitor, although for different reasons. I look at, like, Jorge will never be that again, and I almost can't believe he was. But who he was walking into the cage that night was a dangerous freaking man that even a resurgent Nate Diaz really had nothing for. Now,
there were a couple of times Nate was able to pop him with a good 1-2.
And he did rally before
and you would
the
see Jorge smile when they would clinch. But to your point, Nate got dropped multiple times in this fight. Heavy body kicks. The body kicks were devastating. The boxing, you see the cut open there.
But who gives Nate trouble? What was this fight? Was this a welterweight fight officially?
This is a welterweight fight.
But even when he would